Yeah, 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 yeah. Started in the land down under Redbelly in the mix. Blockchain revolution, fixing all the tricks. Instagram only visionary in the game. Built a fork-proof chain, bringing the flame.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Mark Monfort from Not Centralized for another Redbelly Insights episode. And we've got a great guest on today that many of you will have known from early things that have been done. And we're going to hear about an amazing pivot. But Jeremy Hastings of Hutley, thanks for joining us.
Yep, no, thanks for having me, mate.
Fantastic. Before we go on, I do have to just remind people that this AMA is for informational purposes only. Redbelly Network is a blockchain infrastructure provider and does not endorse or promote any financial products or investment opportunities. All opinions expressed are those of the speakers. Please do your own research and comply with applicable laws in your jurisdiction. Now we've got the boring stuff out the way. Over to the fun stuff, Jeremy. It's been an amazing journey that you guys are on. Having done a lot of work myself in the Australian property space and, in finance, did some stuff with PEXA, etc. Like, we all know how important property is. And even before the Redbelly journey, you guys were doing some amazing things. So for those who only know Hutley on digital platforms, how do you explain the kit towards building this fully AI-powered property agents?
Yes, yeah. So agentic AI, how did I end up in a space that wasn't even a space a year ago? So it was about a year ago, actually. And I saw some stats on Google. And at the time, I think it was about 46.5% of users were using the prompt at the top of Google rather than search. And that had me worried. I saw this sort of existential threat to Hutley, not just Hutley, really, any platform that relies on a traditional front end. And so I fast forwarded and went, geez, if people are prompting and by nature we're lazy and people will prompt more and more and do less and less work, we need to get in front of this. And so I had two choices, cover and run or jump in front. And so I always love a battle. So jump in front was the path we took. And so I reached out to my network, asked the contact details of a CTO who had AI experience. And I had a cup of coffee with a guy by the name of Daniel Pedroso, who actually now is the co-founder and CTO of Hutley. And so I had a cup of coffee and he was sharing with me that he'd built this agentic AI solution. And I know the Redbelly network's fairly sophisticated, but agentic AI is AI that acts, not just answers. So it understands goals. So you give it a job description, it can do all of its own planning. So it breaks work into actions to get the result, takes autonomous action. So it just keeps working to get to the outcome, uses tools and data Hutley has a treasure trove of. And it also learns and improves along the way. So agentic AI is not AI as everybody knows it right now. When we haven't pivoted to AI, that would be 2 years too late. We're very much in the agentic space. And so Dan showed me this platform. I couldn't believe it. I said, that doesn't exist yet. And then it had some multinational companies already using it. And I said to him, look, here's the distribution and data that we have. If we were to go really deep on agentic AI and real estate, I think we have something really special. And unfortunately, he agreed. And fast forward a couple of months, we acquired his company. He came on board as co-founder. And here we are today. And so I guess what does it mean for our customers is in real estate? It really fundamentally changes how work is done. So you compress, and you'll see a demo in a little bit anyway, but you can give a natural prompt or you can create a workflow, and a workflow could be triggered by schedule, email, Slack, a webhook, an API call. So it can be triggered by any sort of actions, and then essentially an agentic team stands up and does the work that humans once did. So I don't know what my kid's going to do for a living in 20 years time. But I thought, hell, may as well get in front of this.
We don't have as many people farming the land anymore. We don't have as many horse-drawn carriages anymore. We will evolve. So what your kids do, I know, is going to change. And, this is all music to my ears because I've led a lot of the AI stuff over at Not Centralized along with Arturo, and seeing and being at the forefront of that space, the AI space, but also the blockchain space. Like, yours is such an interesting use case, bringing it together. But I like what you said there, like, you've got choices and you kind of jump in front of it. I was almost thinking of the trolley problem, where it's like, if you continue the trolley down one way, it's going to kill 3 people. If you change course, you could choose to make it like go just kill one person, but then maybe you just choose to just step in front of the trolley yourself and try to solve the problem somehow. It's going to be moving. But you're right, like you Just one more thing. Like right now, people know of AI chatbot. That's one-to-one, one input, one output. What you're talking about is leverage and scale. One input, 100 steps, 10 steps, whatever that
Yeah,
is.
that's right. Yeah, so to put it in real terms, we have a customer right now we have a sales authority workflow. So traditionally, a real estate agent would meet with a customer and convince them that they are the one to sell their home. And if anyone's ever sold a home, sales agents love the sell. They don't love the paperwork. So what happens from there is they ask someone in their back of office, typically offshore or onshore. They log into a platform to generate a form. They then log into a data platform like Pricefinder or CoreLogic or now Cotality to pull data through, get the title, get all the information you need, log into their CRM, which is their trust accounting platform, to pull through the vendor details and all the other details like bank details, etc., for the authority, before logging back into the real estate contract solution to then fill in the contract, get approval from the agent, then send it for signing. Then once it's signed, download the document, and then update all their systems. That's now done by an agentic team. So there's no human involvement at all. And it's done in less time because we have the advantage of a mix of APIs and then a browser automation agentic tool that we developed in-house. And so that is now done in a fraction of the time at the fraction of the cost. So our big value proposition to our partners now is we literally run your business at 20% of your cost. And so our customers are saving millions and millions of dollars a year by using the platform. And I guess it was interesting, what happens to these other solutions is the question that, that the people then ask. And we've rolled them all in. So the form solution, e-signing, property data, the payments, all the work that we've done with Redbelly was actually just fortuitous. We had this beautiful smart contract payment solution and now it just rolls into the agentic team. So we have one platform. It's really exciting. Like I've been on this journey now for 7-8 years, and this is the first time in I think in Hartley's history, certainly, that we've had true product market fit where I can speak to a customer and in 3 minutes I'm saying nothing and they're telling me how they're going to be using the solution in their business. And payments is a big part of that. If you're real estate is all about the transaction or the safe movement of money. And for us, the work that we've been doing with Redbelly over the last 12 months, or longer than that, actually, last couple of years, and in particular now, is certainly now coming to pay absolute dividends. So we've mixed the two, agentic and smart contracts. I don't think anyone's doing that globally yet. So we're kind of pumped.
I love to see it. And especially, given that property is like one of the, after cricket, after rugby, it's like the third biggest sport in Australia.
I think it's probably the biggest. I think if you look at viewership numbers, especially if it's rugby union, I think croquet is beating rugby at the moment. But and as a rugby supporter, I'm very upset about that. But absolutely, real estate is the number one sport.
Where do you think that, what was the moment, Hutley, obviously this digital platform, there was rent rolls, there's various other things there. People know what you guys do, but when did you think that, you kind of mentioned it, but what was that moment of realization when you saw that AI could replace entire layers of property admin rather than just streamlining forms? Because like people think, I'll just do forms or I'll just use it for a bit of marketing and stuff. There's far more to it. What was that kind of realization like?
Yeah, and I think it's evolving so quickly is the other part of the of the landscape that we're seeing at the moment. And AI is a great enabler. And I think everybody at the moment has a lens that it's a productivity tool. Like it will be used and then I can use it to make myself more efficient. And I love reading articles where people are sort of focused on this, it makes me better at my job. And there's some truth to that, absolutely. But there is also this agentic wave coming through where a lot of jobs, traditional jobs, just won't exist anymore. And as dire as that sounds, if you look at wage arbitrage, it's kind of the history of time, isn't it? You to your point at the start, you have horse and cart. Then you have the industrial age. You have the technology age. You then have cloud compute. Took over over servers in the office. You then went through this SaaS wave, which is all about the democratization of software to drive efficiency and then on the wage arbitrage. More recently, you had going to offshore, Philippines, India, etc., for development and for customer support. Agentic is literally just that. The difference is that it works 365 days a year, 24/7, never calls it sick, doesn't have annual leave, and does the job properly every single time. So it's really just an evolution of wage arbitrage, and as scary as that might be, there is still a strong place in this world for humans. At the end of the day, you still need a human connection to build trust. I don't think we'll ever get to the point where you trust an agentic team more
Yep.
than you do another person. But
Agreed.
I think the world will just evolve with that, and we'll see how it goes. But from Hutley's perspective, we see real estate as this almost analog industry that would really benefit from agentic AI. And the benefit is not actually about the real estate agency itself. It's about the seller, buyer, landlord, tenant accessing data, seeing information, being able to transact and work together. And I think that's the fundamental shift we're going to see in real estate. I think real estate is 103 or 105 years. The system hasn't changed. And so if there's any industry that's now ripe for a movement to the new world, it's real estate. And we want to lead that, or we are leading that charge.
I love it. And, this whole kind of move to this agentic kind of world does set you at the forefront of what is possible. And you guys already have a lot of flow through your space. So this is like a natural progression that you guys are trying to disrupt yourselves before others do. But in simple terms, what does your AI agent say do today? And we know that this is the worst. There's always that saying, this is the worst it's ever going to be. Just keeps on improving. They're right, because it's still early and nascent. And what you said before, the trust, it's a probabilistic system. There's other types of AI, but generative AI is based on that math probability sort of thing. So we do need to have that human expert in the loop. But what does the agent do today that wasn't technically possible, say, a year ago?
Everything. So an agentic team, when a job gets tasked on our platform, we have what's called an orchestration agent spin up. That orchestration agent then has a team of AI agents that it can then coordinate to do work. So you think about a human studies medicine, law, and engineering. That the last person you want to be operating on you is that person, because they actually never subspecialized, and so they're going to be having a guess at best. So AI agents are no different. An AI agent is most like a human, really, really good at a specific job, not so good as a generalist. And so what our platform does is we have an AI agent log into a platform, and it logs into any cloud-based solution, credentials in, does multi-factor authentication, OTP, credentials into a platform as an employee of that business. And it learns that platform. It looks at their knowledge base, indexes everything. And so you then have an employee that within 24 hours knows the platform better than anybody else ever knew in that business. And so when the orchestration agent stands up and says, I need a job done in Microsoft, in whatever it might be, this single AI agent who's the expert does that job. And then it's how does that AI agent pass information through to the other agents, which is through the orchestration piece, to then bring that data together and deliver the task. In real estate contracts, we're already doing this in real time with customers. So real estate contracts, you have to be compliant. Like you can't go, oops, we hallucinated on the $1.3 million price and it's now 13. Like you can't make those mistakes. So we then have a whole lot of ways that we're all proprietary tools that we've built to ensure that the integrity of data stays absolutely core. And we've nailed that. We get it right 100% of the time.
I love to see it. And, also working in that agentic AI space as I do, like I can say how much it's transformed. Even as a developer, just going one-on-one, like one input, one output, we could still get a lot of stuff done. But when it came to like the agentic stuff, it just scaled it far more than it was already scaled after ChatGPT came out. We're going to go into a demo. Like I don't want to hold back, so we're going to go into a demo here with Daniel, walking through this such, generating a lease from an agent, triggering a pay to agreement and initiating a payment. Now we'll watch that just quickly, and I'm going to ask you a few questions just after.
Yep, no worries. Happen to.
And here we are at the demo portion of the podcast. Get to meet some really cool founders in this space. And Daniel, you're one of those ones. Please tell us more about how you came to co-found with Hutley and Jeremy.
Absolutely. So, a little bit of a background. So, Daniel Pedroso here. I usually describe myself as being a stereotypical nerd, really. So, I started coding when I was 10 and just never stopped. And so I'm absolutely passionate about it. It's actually my happy place. And about 10 years ago, I started to get into AI. So got certifications from Stanford, a few other places, and started to dive really deeply into the deep neural network space, and began actually working and developing against LLMs before people even knew what they were. So I got a really cool experience with that. And then a few years ago, I realized that I already had a really big toolbox with different things around how to actually build with AI and all of that. But AI exploded, and a lot of people actually wanted to start building with it, and they had no idea how. So to this stage, it's still a little bit in that gray area where there's a lot of need, a lot of want to build things with AI, but not a lot of know-how. And so, yeah, I started a company called Intelia, and then met Jeremy, and eventually we actually decided to join forces there. And now I'm co-founder and CTO at Hutley.
It's amazing, the work that you've done, and we're about to see a demonstration of this for this podcast. And I've seen, it before. It's pretty amazing what Jeremy showcased, and to meet, the person that's behind it, a fellow tech nerd, founder and creator, and I guess you tinker a lot with like a lot of the different tools. I think it's important for people to realize just your decades of experience working in this space, because there's a lot of people that are new and they won't see all of the different issues that come along the way when you're working especially with probability based models like this. So we're going to see some human in the loop. We're going to see some other guardrails that you put in here, and this is really cool. So looking forward to the demo part.
Yeah, and that's a really good point on the so there's this new shiny thing with AI, but it's actually built on top of decades of just hardcore engineering practices, right? So, like I said, I've been working with AI for about 10 years now, but I had over 10 years prior to that where it was absolutely kind of classic software engineering that doesn't include any AI, and into the DevOps side of things, into the security side of things, and all of that. And absolutely everything actually gets joined together if you actually want to use AI properly and take the value that you can get from it without the absolute security nightmares and the scalability issues and everything else that comes with using LLMs.
Well, looking forward to seeing this demo as we get you to set up.
Cool. Alrighty. So in here, I'll start with a more almost straightforward side of agentic AI, where I'm just tasking via message an agent. And as you can see, I task the agent to actually open a browser and go into a specific product and find information within that product for me. Yeah, as you can see, the agent is able to actually just load any website and actually start doing work in it. When you see those colorful boxes popping around the screen, that's the AI agent actually figuring out what's on the screen and what it can actually interact with, and all of that. So that's a side of agentic AI that I think most people are actually starting to get familiarized with. Just being able to apply a prompt, ask it to do something, etc., etc. Where it starts to get really, really interesting is when you actually start mixing those things. So I'm actually going to, while this is running, I'm going to run a workflow in here, and I'll actually go in and start explaining what this workflow even is.
Go ahead.
So as you can see here, this is actually mixing two different things. This is mixing sending messages to a particular agent, to a particular AI agent, and again, this is actually very similar to what I just did here with just a prompt, where I'm asking the agent to actually log into Property.me, find a specific address, etc. But then it starts actually adding a couple of other things. In this case, it's actually adding an approval node, where the whole workflow will actually stop for a bit and ask for a human approval and all of that. And then this is actually generating a pay-to agreement. So
that's really important, I think, for folks that are watching. There's this whole concept of human in the loop, and because it's probabilistic AI, it's not like the old school machine learning, because large language models are based on big math and probability. You would need to make sure that a human expert is in the loop, seeing these things. It can do things very fast, and that's great. It can do multiple things hundreds of times faster and more than humans can do. But that's why I think it's important to highlight that, for folks watching, this is very good best practice for using generative AI to have a human in the loop.
Absolutely. And not only a human in the loop, sometimes you do need a human, but other times you can actually have other AI models in the loop as well.
Correct.
So you can have AI checking the work of AI, and then finally you get a human to do the final tick and all of that. And the beauty in here specifically is you can actually have fairly complex nodes in here where you're having conditionals or repeats on all those kinds of things where you can branch off and create even a decision tree that you're basically setting in stone. You want X, Y, and Z. You're going to get X, Y, and Z.
And most of the time, workflows that humans do are based on those conditions. Like, if this happens, then do that. As soon as you receive this, you straight away do that. So just getting machines to do it. What have we got here?
Yeah, so this is the approval node. So the agent sent me an email asking me to actually approve this. So if I click that link, I need to give it a response. So I confirm that this agreement is correct, and I'll say approve, and that's being submitted. And when I get back to the workflow itself, the execution will actually resume, which in this case, it's going into the actual pay to agreement. And if I jump into my phone screen here, and unfortunately, it's not actually showing you the, I can see the notification on my phone, but I cannot on the screen here. So let me just go here. So let me just go in here. Here's the pay to agreement.
Let me just show that back on screen again. Let me just show here. There we go. You can see the pay to notification backwards for people watching, but that is a real CBA. I'm a customer, so I know what that looks like. Very good.
So if I actually go back to these here, I should probably be able to just show that in there. Let's see.
Sure.
There you go.
Fantastic. Look at that.
We've hidden okay, so CBA doesn't actually let me do that.
That's a good UX thing, not for demos, but for privacy. So just know, folks, that here in Australia we've got very good banking rails, right? But this is integrating into that, and that's the most important thing. This is some amazing stuff that you can see at show here. This is the future of how payments and workflows are going to be. You basically got a smart contract running in the background. You built agents on top, and people don't even realize that there's all of this kind of stuff that's sitting on what's effectively a Hutley branded digital wallet. So Redbelly helps abstract away the smart contract side of things so that folks like you guys at Hutley, you can create these smart agents that are actually using like payment tools and workflows. That's pretty amazing, Daniel.
Yeah, no, the ability to go from a real world contract, right? In this case, for instance, a rental agreement or a sales agreement, and from there go to a smart contract that's actually going to handle that whole process and move money into an escrow account, and finally be able to actually turn that into an actual, actually move the money into a real account and all of that without actually having to worry about, for instance, a big concern, as we mentioned before, AI, for instance, going in and hallucinating. All this part where it gets to a real world asset or a real world transaction actually happening, all of this is actually going through a smart contract and backed by real documents, real agreements, real signatures in the real world. And yeah, so you basically get the best of both worlds. You get absolute certainty when you need absolute certainty, and you get intelligence or artificial intelligence when it's actually needed as well.
Absolutely. And I think, the key thing is that you guys have brought this together, and you're also doing this thing where it's the concept of decoupling the money from the obligations. So we can do things like in future, if there's future rental payments, but we need to pay for something now, we can garnish out of that future obligation to actually make things happen now, whether it's marketing that can be garnished out of settlements with this tokenized cash and being able to do things in a more secure and safe way to move money in the real estate space. I think this is a game changer. So Daniel, thanks so much. Please continue to develop this. We need this now. We're looking forward to having you guys on the show in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Wow, that was really cool. So thanks to Daniel for that. But Jeremy, can you walk us through what was happening there, say, behind the scenes?
Yeah, so the solution that we have built, and I think we shared with the Redbelly network previously, was a sales authority in a sales contract or a leasing authority in a leasing contract. So it's in a residential space, but does commercial as well. So the solution is agnostic. What it does is it takes the data from those contracts, creates a smart contract, turns that into a credit contract, creates a pay to agreement. The money moves into escrow. We tokenize that cash so we can then create essentially an automated accounting solution for real estate, which then when the money gets paid out, it burns the tokens on the other side. So a cent of a token equals a cent in escrow, and therefore you always have everything fully accountable. Now, that's what we built, and I mean, it's operating and very happy about it. Like it's what the next stage was okay, if we're going down the agentic route, what does that actually look like? So, and that's essentially then we said, okay, what we need to do is spin up a few different elements here. So one of them is an agentic team that looks after payments. So taking the contract and the authority, turning and making sure that the process works end to end, and then initiating the different tasks along the way, maintenance requests, a credit contract, an additional credit contract in relation to replacing the hot water system. So there's a whole micro loan element to that. We have an Australian credit license, so we can do that. And so there's the agentic team then going, okay, what's the action needs of the customers around the table? I'm very big on customer, technology is exciting, but I'm actually not a customer guy, but what does the customer actually need around the table to be able to do their day-to-day work? And so that's what we put our energy into. And then the other change in real estate is KYC AML obligations. So a lot of listeners have probably heard about the changes in July coming through. And really what it is it's not new legislation, it's just expanding out, or tranche two, just expanding out who's covered by the legislation. And I think AUSTRAC or the government cottoned on that a fair bit of money as casinos start getting heavily regulated and scrutinised. Some money may be moving through real estate, buy an asset in cash and get a yield, get the capital gain, and what an outcome. So I think real estate became a really clear, focus for the government around how do we prevent wrong actors in the ecosystem. And so the changes in for what it means for a real estate business, though, is they're taking on a financial compliance layer that previously they'd never had to do. And secondly, real estate agents are real estate agents. So they're there to sell property. They're actually not geared up to then start running sort of heavy compliance pieces. So what we're working at the moment, and I'll hopefully be able to announce very soon, it's one of the biggest law firms in the world, but we're working with a very big law firm at the moment around an agentic KYC AML team. And so they will build out the compliance plan for that agency, do the risk assessment, and then have an agentic team that run the whole layer of KYC AML for that business on any transaction. And so we'll be using Redbelly for that. So we'll create a digital wallet when we do the KYC. We'll then have what we call an RE key, which is a real estate key that then can be used by that individual on a zero knowledge proof basis to say who they are. And then we'll also be able to credential other elements of the real estate world into that wallet. And so it becomes a really interesting piece. You then have an agentic team managing KYC AML obligations in the context of Hartley Pay and the money that's moving through with that agentic team. And suddenly your whole finance function in real estate is now being managed by an agentic team at a fraction of the cost, with a compliance overlay backed by an international law firm. And suddenly you have, a really beautiful end-to-end solution which eliminates theft, fraud, any sort of poor actor in the real estate space, accidental or not, solves sort of KYC AML obligations. It's done at almost zero cost. So we won't be charging transaction fees to our customers on the payment side. So it's a better outcome for the seller, buyer, landlord, tenant. And it's just a really smart, safe way to move money. So That's where we see the agentic team playing. And that's why there was this beautiful marriage between the agentic and the smart contract. And you couldn't do that in traditional banking. So you can't have an agentic player sort of log in and run payments through NAV or Macquarie. Like it's just that might be pushing the boundary a little bit. So we really had to really lean on the smart contract solution that we built with Redbelly to solve for that.
Brilliant. I'm going to jump ahead because you're mentioning like KYC. There are these reforms that are happening in Australia for mid next year, affecting so many people that whether it's trusts or just touching on client money, that the KYC reforms and AML CTF, these changes coming in 2026. What opportunities, apart from what you mentioned there, do you see for AI-driven onboarding and risk checks? Because right now it's so manually driven even before. And I know whether it's law firms that I work with and stuff like, and many people are scrambling to try to figure this out right now because it's a big change and doing things that they haven't had to do. So could you talk to me more about like the opportunities that you see there for this AI-driven onboarding?
Yeah, absolutely. So we apart from the partnership, obviously around the agentic team that will do the KYC AML compliance piece, and that's going to be a big part of meeting the obligations under the legislation. The other part is this RE key credential that we'll be storing in individuals' wallets. So at the moment, I go to transacting real estate as a vendor, for an example. I get KYC like a bucket load. I get KYC I'm going to be KYC by my sales agent. I'm going to be KYC by my lawyer. I'm going to be KYC by I think it was another KYC at the end of settlement. Like there's this almost like hit, and that's really inefficient. It's costly. It makes no sense. And so the RE key that they're building and will release at the early next year is essentially somebody does their KYC through Redbelly. They then have a credential that gets stored in their wallet, which is what we call an RE key. And that RE key essentially is just a hash that says this is who I am, and we use zero knowledge proof to prove that that's who they are. Now, that RE key has had a benefit in real estate that people don't realize. So when you go to complete a contract at the moment, a landlord doesn't want the tenant to know their personal details, and the tenant typically doesn't want their PII to be left out there. So you can actually now put this key into the contract and then key it in, check with the person on their digital wallet, and yes, confirm that's who I am. And so that way you can then actually totally decouple all this PII that's sitting in these documents that only God knows where it ends up. So there's a whole lot of really interesting things you can then do around protecting individuals' data, which is going to become so critical as AI moves forward, then quantum computing, etc. So protecting PII, the only place it should be is on a person's wallet, on their phone, stored on blockchain. Like it's just, I think that's where we will end up. I think that's inevitable. Yeah. And I think that's where Redbelly is the perfect partner for us.
This is the way. It has to be, because there's so many businesses that, like you would have faced this as well, like talking about doing something on blockchain, and the typical thing that would be said is that, oh, great, but people that understand the tech, they're like, but everything gets shown. It's too transparent. And what you're touching on is precisely it. And it's not just like that we're putting in privacy, we're putting in better privacy than you have right now. Current solutions like handling PII, you just can't share, like saying the health space. Doctors, GPs, hospitals, they can't be sharing data. So there's solutions that need to be figured out. Funnily enough, they're using cryptography for that, because that's the only way to de-identify PII, personally identifiable information for the folks that are watching, so that these things can be shared, and information doesn't have to move just to prove something. So I think this is great. How do these reforms, going back to that, make, let's call it trustless accounting and on-chain audit trails more valuable for agencies, landlords, regulators? Well, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I try and steer clear of the word trustless accounting, because it's almost counterintuitive. So, and the industry had gone through a bit of a stage where there's had multiple providers along the way sort of go, here's trustless accounting. The problem with trustless accounting in the real world, again coming back to the customer, is if the money moves directly from A to B, and the intermediary, if there is an intermediary, so let's sort of call it out. There's always going to be a world where there's both. A bit like Uber taxi. Like you're never going to see the complete replacement of an intermediary. There's always going to be a world of both. On Hutley Star, we're an infrastructure play, so I'll serve everyone. Like for us, it's an infrastructure company. So in that world, when you have an intermediary and the money gets paid from A to B straight to the landlord in the trustless concept, it's really, really hard then to meet the obligations of the property, which is what we call the property group. And the property might be a maintenance obligation, it might be, there's just ins and outs. There's water bills, there's gas bills, like there's just things that happen in property that need to be paid. And so trying to get money back from a landlord to go and pay for that is a real challenge. It's inconvenient for everybody. So part of what we built with in our payment solution was, okay, how about we create this concept of a property group? And so whether that property group is a landlord managing their own property, or whether it's an agency managing a property, let's give the property an identity in its own right. And then that property can initiate and manage a whole lot of transactions. So you then have a pool of funds that might sit there that cover maintenance, that cover X, that cover Y, but they're always in the name of the individual. So they're always, as in a wallet sense, they're either attached to a landlord or what would this be, a seller's wallet or the buyer or tenant's wallet. And so the money never lives with us. The tokenized cash never lives with us. It just lives in this property group. And then in that property group, just say you have a transaction that you're holding $1,000, you got to replace the whole voice system for $3,000. That's where we see a really beautiful opportunity to go, okay, here's a $2,000 credit contract that we can then garnish rent on a forward basis for the next 6, 7, 8 weeks and take that money out gradually back into the property group to pay that credit contract without the landlord ever having to worry about cash flow. And so that's where we see this. I call it automated accounting or automated. I don't call it automated trust accounting, but it's this automated accounting element where it's this beautiful hybrid between the trustless world and the world that we know it right now, that actually takes the practical challenges a customer faces into consideration in its design.
I like it. And I agree that is a better name for it. So, all of these techniques, whether it's from the blockchain space and the strengths that come from that and the agentic AI space, you've made the point there before that once we've solved the AI and data, the blockchain is the easy part. I just want to talk about that. Why does on-chain ledgers matter? Why do on-chain ledgers matter for property transactions, and I'd argue transactions in general?
Yeah, so for I think if you look at real estate in particular, we've moved in the last, it's not even a long time ago, call it the last 3 to 5 years, from paper-based title to an electronic register. Like, that's horrifying. Like, and that's like moving. It's 20 years behind, when that part of the journey shifted anyway. And so I think blockchain just becomes the next evolution of how these records are stored, and they're stored in a way that increases speed in transaction. Like, so I don't know if it's ever dealt with a land registry. It's a process. It's better than what it once was, but it still takes many days to have title, solved and these things resolved. And so I think for land registries, there's a really commercial opportunity here that we've shared with them, and there's interest. Is what's the wrapper that you put in front of the registry? So to keep the registry as the source of truth, you don't take that away, but you put a wrapper in front of it that enables you to essentially play the best of the blockchain ledger coupled with your traditional source of truth being the government's data. You then can play this really, really interesting world. And when you start doing that, you then open up this opportunity for that wrapper to start doing things that just can't be done on title right now. So I'll give you some examples. You want to talk about saving the housing crisis. So you have land and you have a property. Why can't land be decoupled from the property or the infrastructure on top? So then you have large super funds, etc., own the land underneath. They get the appreciation of land, and the person that has the asset on top gets the appreciation of that asset. And so they put a new kitchen, put a pool in, whatever it might be. They get the value shift there. That way the house can be sold separate to the land. And so suddenly you've halved the cost of buying property in Australia, without removing the fundamental right of that person to do whatever they want, 300 mil or called 3 meters down and above, or do you want to, a bit like mining, who owns the resources? Well, the Commonwealth, not the individual, or not the mine, not the farmer that owns the land. So it's very, very similar concept. If you actually decouple the two, and now you can do that in when you have a blockchain, and you can then actually interact with that register in real time and start having, parties get registered and on that title, instantly, rather than the traditional system that we have at the moment. So, we've got this property crisis in Australia, and I think there's some really, really easy ways to solve for this using the technology that's available today. And it's just thinking differently. It's thinking naturally. How do we solve for the housing crisis? Well, half the price of the house. And there's plenty of super funds that have the cash to put into the land. And if that means as a homeowner, I've halved the cost to buy a house, and I've got to pay a yield to rent the land. I'm going to be happy to do that. Like I would do it.
Absolutely.
And so it's a easy way to solve for it. But it comes back to your original point, like to be able to do that task, to really fundamentally change how we transact property, we need to be thinking differently and think about the technologies available. And that's where blockchain really becomes a real world asset ledger that becomes, this really great utility attached to it.
It's really interesting. You just made me think about, okay, so you've got these two technologies. You've got agentic AI that can give things personas, and you can delegate access to do things on the one side. Then you've got the blockchain, which is this safe, secure ledger for recording transactions and things that have happened. I would almost argue that you can't go fully into the agentic AI space without having blockchain, and you can't go fully into the capabilities of blockchain without having agentic AI. This is like a moment that brings these two together, because imagine a world where you've got rules around what can be done to your property, your land, etc., and it's run by an agentic AI solution. And what you've got on this other side is that we can trust what's happening, because it's not a database. It's actually, being done on blockchain. Just going back to that, because I think this is inspiring stuff that you're doing here. I'm keen to see it grow. Just one more thing, like with Hartley Wallet, the hashed agreements that you've got there. I was just thinking about that, and the automated accounting, not trustless, but the automated accounting that you talked about. How does that reduce fraud, misallocation of rent, disputes between agents, landlords? How does it solve for that, you think?
Yeah, so it's interesting. You look at the way that eBay has solved for the movement of money in their ecosystem, and it's not too different. So I recently sold something on eBay. The last time I sold something on eBay would have been 15 years ago, like a long time ago. So it would have been in the early. I don't know when eBay was actually. I think eBay was a super early one, wasn't it? So I think it's been around for a very long time. But back then you couldn't transact money on eBay. And so on eBay right now, someone pays, they hold it in escrow, gets held for 3 days after the goods are delivered. So there's a window for dispute, as an example. And I think that's where the automated accounting comes into it. So how do you move money in a way that enables parties to engage and have the discussion where they feel like something hasn't gone to as per the contract or as per the agreement? I think that's the important bit here as well. There's a contract. This is not a case of, I don't like the condition of, the screen on my phone. This is, you have a contract. There's really prescribed legislation around that. And so the beauty of real estate is how regulated it is. So, in the automated accounting side, you're really then dealing with has the party met their obligations under the contract in this transaction? It's a yes or no. There's not a lot of grey. And so therefore it's an easy transaction. Now on the cash side, how do you stop fraud? Well, if the money can never be intercepted in this circumstance. So if you think about it, we've co-washed our AML to customer at the front end. We then are taking that, turning to a credit contract and doing a pay to agreement. So for the pay to agreement to work, Mark has to receive something into his Macquarie or CBA, or I don't know who you bank with, NAB. You get a pay to agreement that says, yes, I'm happy to pass this money through to an escrow account, to Hartley, to hold that funds like eBay does on while the property transacts. And so on the money out, the landlord or for any party to take money out of a system, they have to do KYC AML. They have to go through the same rigorous process to be able to extract money out. So it's literally impossible now to pull money out of the ecosystem without being a verified party. And again, same concept. It's going from bank account to bank account. So you don't have the ability for someone to intercept that email or change digits or numbers. It is 100% secure and locked down as to how money moves. And I think that is the beauty of what the solution is we've literally eliminated the risk of theft and fraud. And in this circumstance, well, there's no intermediary holding the money. So you haven't got the risk of a real estate agent. My history was I had a property and I had $13,000 stolen from the agent. they went to jail, so they did serve some time. But and the case was at the time it was one of the largest cases in New South Wales, and so I've been burnt from this myself. So and I'm not suggesting that real estate agents aren't trustworthy individuals. I think any system in the history of mankind that is open to poor behaviour has resulted in that, and that's not a reflection on the industry. It's just a reflection on the nature of humans. And so so I think that solving for that, the best way to solve for that is you engineer it out. It's, you're basically just classic case of if you can engineer out a problem, risk out completely, that's always the best way to go.
People need to think about that. They're so, let's call it on the regulator side, when they were very anti-blockchain and whatnot. And it's the irony that actually blockchain technology, maybe you're anti the crypto side of things and the trading and whatnot. The things that kind of happen with that when it's like untoward or like nefarious. But when it comes to the technology, this is actually technology they should be using. Because you can
yeah, absolutely. But I think the challenge for government, and I think it's calling out interest here. So the interest of the government is they hold the money that's held in trust under the Property Act at the moment. That interest goes to the government, and so and so it actually is an important revenue stream for the government, in particular around bonds between landlord and tenant. Now, that a new system doesn't have to be at the sacrifice of an old. There's plenty of mechanisms in place, levies or fees or whatever way that the government might want to recoup that revenue. But my argument would be that agentic AI should help governments become a hell of a lot more efficient. So they shouldn't be reliant on these revenue streams because by fundamental principle, I do struggle that why does money held in these trusts go to government when actually it's the tenant's bond, and that's the Aussie battler that doesn't own a home. They should probably be getting the benefit of the interest accrued over the term of that bond. And so there's an element of fairness there that I think there needs to be a national conversation around.
I think that is spot on, because like a lot of people, they don't just question why these things happen. And I think the capabilities of these two technologies brought together even like help you really question things. And I think a lot of people, whether they're in Australia or not, should question these things. Going to something that I was mentioned before, because you guys have already been doing stuff in this like digital kind of like technology for property space already and are already licensed. You've got the credit facilities, all these things. This is what a lot of folks miss out on. They have a great idea and a solution, but there's no license, so these things can't really evolve. But speaking of licensing, how do you manage the balance of needing to innovate fast on the one side, and you've got the reality of compliance and real estate on the other?
It's smack bang where we are at the moment. So we really want to. I'm very passionate about getting this full scale going. And at the moment it's a licensing process that we're working through. So under the design that we built out, the product that we have, and what everybody saw in the demo today, we need a non-cash facility, an AFSL, and so we're going through that process to do that, and that just takes time. Like there's a lot of sort of regulatory focus at the moment around crypto and around stable coins and just the industry generally. So we're sort of battling a few headwinds around that side as we go through the process, but our aim is to have that license sold for as soon as possible, and I think it's I don't think it'll be long now, and then we'll be full flight. So it's exciting.
I think that's really interesting stuff. The idea of like many entrepreneurs, many founders, even innovation arms within wrestle with this sort of thing. So I think by hearing stories like this, whether it's a one-person shop or it's 100-person law firm, etc., it's getting inspired by these things is really good to see, because I think we're all going to learn from each other. Like you guys and Daniel, like we've certainly not been the ones to necessarily there are things that we create, but we all build on all of these other Lego blocks of ideas. And I'm sure that as AI and blockchain evolves, and as you get stuff out there and start getting feedback, there's going to be newer innovations. So I'm really keen to see all of that. Just thinking about what's next, let's talk about the market shift and that sort of thing. What does an agency running on Hutley AI look like in, say, 2 years' time, operationally, financially, etc.? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't even think it's 2 years. I think it's more 3 months. So we're working with a very large group at the moment, and we'll have fully automated their their back into their business in the next 3 months. And so what that means for that customer is 120 roles. What it means for for the clients, the seller, buyer, landlord, tenant, is a much faster, smoother, more transparent and fair transaction. Uh, and 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 that's kind of the marriage that we're looking for. We're not doing agentic for agentic's sake. We're doing it because it just makes really good business sense for our customers and for the seller, buyer, landlord, tenant. And same with the payment solution. That's why a few times this call I've highlighted the customer problem we're solving for, because that's what matters at the end of the day. Is that the technology is a means to an end. But to answer your question, I think agentic AI will essentially just see a really smooth, transparent, fair ecosystem playing field for all. And I think you'll see mass efficiencies in how real estate is transacted. And I think that's only good news for the people that matter most, which is the seller, buyer, landlord, tenants.
I think it is, and taking it back as you've done throughout this episode, it really is about that end customer. A lot of folks will get enamored by the technology and just get drunk on that without thinking, well, how does it actually solve a problem? And I'd argue that there's a lot of, and we see it right now, there's a lot of really bad solutions out there because we know they're inefficient, but that's just what's in place that work because they're doing something useful as far as the customer's aware. Our job is to make sure that they're aware of the better ways that things can be done and getting that out there. So now that the tech is ready, licensing is this last sort of hurdle. What should the industry expect from Hutley over the next 12 months?
Yeah, so the enterprise customers that we're working with in real estate sort of expand property services. So not just real estate agency groups, but think lawyers, think people that provide credit or finance into real estate as well. And so the customers that we're working with is really focused on what are the workflows that they can automate in their business to drive greater efficiency. One of the ones that we're building at the moment is an agentic team that does the credit assessment for vendor paid advertising. And so that credit assessment team or agentic team will talk to the client, make sure they get all the documentation, read the credit license for that provider, do the assessment that needs to be done as per their guidelines and rules, and then make a credit assessment, get it approved by a human in control, and then notify the person that they have a loan. And so that process right now takes that business many, many, many days to do. With an agentic team, we're looking at sort of 20 to 30 minutes. And so it's just a fundamental shift in that type of experience. And so what that means for the client is, as a vendor, great, I can afford a marketing budget to be able to sell my property. For a real estate agent, great, I've got the cash there to be able to market this property and sell it. So it's, again, solving for those friction points in a much more efficient way. But I think to answer your question, in 12 months' time, I see a fundamental shift in how real estate is being transacted in Hutley. I see the opportunity for us is to really push hard against some of the the red team and the green team in real estate, and hold a position in the market that with simply a fundamentally different offer that everybody else has in the market, was leveraging all of our existing products and services as part of that agentic solution.
I love it. I think that it's going to really fundamentally change there in terms of like how we think about property, but I think it's going to give a lot of ideas to other industries that see this and go, hang on a second. I like, the pattern that they've got there. We've got something similar here. So who knows, it might not just be property that you guys are doing in 12 months time, but we'll see. I think that the core of what you're building, solving these problems is going to be really interesting. Now, just going back around to it, and obviously we're on the Redbelly podcast, but it's this question about why Redbelly. You could have chosen any number of private ledgers or chains. What makes Redbelly the right trust layer for property, especially when you're, let's call it, anchoring contracts, payments? There's these audit trails that are needed. Regulators depend on this. It's such a highly regulated industry here. But yeah, so with all of that, why Redbelly for you?
Yeah, for two reasons really. It's very similar to Hutley's sort of journey on the agentic space. Like we've chosen to tackle one vertical in real estate really, really well. And Redbelly's not too dissimilar. You guys chose to tackle real world assets. You chose to tackle and work within a regulated world. So I think that the Redbelly thesis was the right thesis. I think it was a really smart, pragmatic way to bring blockchain into mainstream and actually solve for real world problems, not just the a nice crypto coin that goes up and down. So I think the fundamentals are right at Redbelly, and I think that is the most important part. And so I think the value of Redbelly in 2, 3, 5 years from now will be unbelievably high. Like I kind of see this one path that it will go on now, and as people like Hutley now are already built and now getting licensing to continue deploying, and that's without even talking about our rewards program that we want to set up with Redbelly as well. But that's a whole separate announcement. But I look at it and I go, Redbelly just got the fundamentals right, and I needed a blockchain that took identity seriously. Like that is so important in a transaction. And as much as we wanted, trust is critical. I think that's where a lot of blockchains and crypto generally, have probably done a disservice to the technology. And I think that's where Redbelly's sort of correcting that path and getting it right. Because at the end of the day, you cannot transact in real estate without being a trusted party, without being an identified known party. And it doesn't mean I need to know everything about you. All I need to know is that you are KYC AML, that I can trust that process, and that there is a legitimate person at the other end of the transaction. That is who they are, and Redbelly ticks all those boxes. So for Hutley, it was finding a blockchain that really solved for those fundamental issues. And then we did speak about zero knowledge proofs and how do you have data and prove that out, etc. So there's just some fundamental offerings in Redbelly that also set it apart. And obviously the speed of Redbelly is phenomenal. So it was kind of like a ticks across the board for us. We did a whole lot of work around who's the right partner, and Redbelly sort of outstripped everybody else. So it was a no-brainer at the end of the day.
Well done on the choice. Obviously, I would say that, being biased as I am, but I just want to round off with a bit of a call to action. For agencies, landlords, prop tech builders, those folks that are watching this, and even others that are just adjacent to that space. What's the best way to engage with Hutley as you move into this like AI native phase? Or you've moved into it, not like you already are into it, but
we're onboarding at the moment and drowning in the number of customers. So we're sort of hiring at the moment to solve for the volume that we're seeing, which is great. But yeah, just go to the website, get in touch, and that's the best way to reach out to the team to then jump on board. A bit of a waiting list at the moment, but that waiting list is well worth it when you're saving 80% of your costs in business. So it's kind of a no-brainer.
I think it's interesting. Whenever I've had presentations like this, Arturo and I, we presented at the Oz Crypto Convention that was here in Sydney a few weeks ago, and you just had a lineup of people that come to you with ideas. Like we merely presented our story, the things that we've been working on, Project Acacia stuff with Redbelly, and some other ideas around how AI, helps in the whole kind of blockchain space more generally. And I wish we'd had this before then, because I would have mentioned like Hutley up on stage in a bit more detail, but people were interested is my point, and people were lining up. So I'm sure there's going to be a few folks knocking down at your door to engage.
Yeah, no, looking forward to speak to anyone that hears about us through this podcast. So yeah, more than happy to have a chat.
Jeremy, thank you so much for your time. I'll let you get on to it. We'll talk soon.
All right, thanks so much for your time, mate. Really appreciate it.
Yo. Yo. Redbelly insights, yeah, the Partax flow. Expert guest knowledge, watch the wisdom grow. Open markets, that's the motto, loud and clear. Track 5 meets the 5, banish all the fear. Redbelly, serpent in the grass, shedding no skins, moving real fast, bridging the gap.